respond. An interactive science tutorial for students like you. People are living organisms, and we need certain things to keep us alive. We need food, like this salad, to give us energy. We also need oxygen from the air, as well as other nutrients. Plants are living organisms too. Just like us, plants need certain things to keep them alive. They need carbon dioxide from the air, water, and sunlight. In addition, all living things respond to their environments. For example, when you're hot, you sweat. You're responding to the hot environment, and the sweating should help you cool down. Plants also have to respond to their environment. In this tutorial, we'll investigate and describe ways plants respond to things like sunlight, heat, water, and gravity. Before we get started, let's review what you should already know. First, we know that there are living and non-living things. Living things include bacteria, mushrooms, plants, and animals. We also know that living things have basic needs to stay alive. All living things need energy, and they get their energy in different ways. Plants use energy provided by the sun, and animals have to eat plants and other animals. Finally, we know that plants are made of leaves which collect sunlight, roots which anchor the plant and absorb water, and the stem which transports water and nutrients around the plant. Let's get started learning how plants respond to their environment. Plants are living organisms. Each plant is made of different parts, and each part has a specific job. Most plants have three parts in common: the roots, the stem, and the leaves. In addition, many plants have some type of reproductive structure like a cone or flower. Plants need certain things to survive. They need sunlight, which is absorbed by the leaves. The leaves will also take in carbon dioxide. Plants also need water, which is brought in by the roots and transported to the leaves by the stem. Carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water will be used to make sugar or food for the plant. Without these needs, the plants will not survive. Great work! The leaves use carbon dioxide and take in sunlight. The roots absorb the water and the stem transports it to the leaves. The leaves will use the water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide to make sugar, which is food for the plant. When you're outside playing, maybe in a race, what do you notice about how your body changes? When your body heats up, you often start to sweat. Your body is reacting to the heat or stimulus. A stimulus is something that causes a response. Have you ever noticed how the pupil or dark spot in your eye changes when you go out into the bright sunlight or have been in the dark? The amount of light is the stimulus. When the bell rings at the end of the school day, what happens? All the students find their ride home. The ringing of the final bell is a stimulus that causes a response, which is the students leave and go home. Let's move on and look at how a plant might respond to a stimulus. Let's practice what we know about stimulus and response. Select all of the choices that are examples of a stimulus and its actual response. Click on the audio icons to have each choice read to you. Click Submit when you've completed your answers. You are hot and you sweat. The final bell rings at school and you leave to go home. It's dark and the pupils in your eyes change. Great work! A stimulus causes a response. Examples of a stimulus and a response would include when you're hot, you sweat to cool yourself off. When it gets dark, the pupil in your eyes will get bigger to let more light in. And when the final bell rings at the end of the school day, you leave to go home. The sun in the sky may be a stimulus, but there's no corresponding response. Have you ever wondered why leaves are usually pointed up? Light is needed for every plant to survive, and the light is coming from above. Plants respond to this light by growing up towards the light so they can absorb as much light as possible. Look at this plant growing above the other plants so that it can maximize the amount of sunlight it receives. The light is the stimulus, and the response is its growth towards it. Let's look at the vine on this tree. Do you see how the vine is only on one side of the tree? Can you guess why it's only growing on one side of the tree? It has to do with light. Notice on the back side there are also other plants, but on the front there's plenty of light. The backside doesn't get enough sunlight, so the vine doesn't grow there. Without the stimulus of light on the back of the tree, there isn't a response of vine growth. Let's practice what we learned. Drag each statement to the correct place based on if it is or is not a response to the stimulus of light. Click Submit when you've completed your answer. A plant's response to light. Not a plant's response to light. Great work! Light is needed for plants to survive and make their own food. Plants respond to light, a stimulus, by growing in ways so they can absorb as much light as possible. Plants point their leaves up and will specifically grow towards the light. Plants don't typically want to be growing in places where there isn't any sunlight. When you're playing with your friends, do you ever try to stand on your head? When you're upside down, even if your eyes are closed, you still know you're upside down because of gravity. Gravity affects all living things. Have you ever planted a seed or helped in a garden? When you plant a seed, you bury it in the ground. When a seed starts to grow, the first part of the plant that starts to grow is the root. Somehow, the new root knows to grow down into the ground. How does it know which way to go? Plants are able to respond to gravity. Gravity pulls on the newly developed plant, and the roots respond to this stimulus by growing towards the strong pull of gravity. You can see the roots still grow in a downward position, even if they're not underground. Let's practice what we know. Look closely at these plant pictures. For each picture, select either true if the picture shows a response to gravity, or false if the picture does not show a response to gravity. Click Submit when you've completed your answers. Great work! The picture of the plant growing on a rock shows the roots growing down, just like the young plant in the ground. Gravity is also affecting the seedling because the first root is growing in a downward direction. In the picture of the plant growing upward, the stimulus is light. This plant is growing its leaves and branches in an upward direction toward the sunlight. We know water is essential for all living things to grow and survive. Drinking water is very important, especially when you're exercising. Plants need water just like we do, so they will respond to the presence of water. Plant roots will grow and stretch out in the ground as much as possible to absorb the water they need to survive. Here are 2 avocado seeds. If you place them partially in water, it will cause the seed to respond by starting to germinate and produce new roots. The water is the stimulus, and new root growth will be the response. Let's practice what we know about a plant's response to water. Pick the one answer that describes the response a plant has to water. Click on the audio icons to have each choice read to you. Click Submit when you've completed your answer. Roots grow towards water. Good work! Water is essential for the survival of plants. Roots will respond to the stimulus of water by growing towards the water. When leaves drop off a tree, whether into the water or on the ground, it's either because the leaf is dead or being dropped by the plant to conserve water. Most flowers open above the water so they can be exposed for pollination to eventually produce seeds. Let's bring all that we've learned together. We know that all living things respond to stimuli. We also know that stimuli are things in your environment that cause a response. Examples of stimuli would include water, heat, and hunger, all of which cause a response. Plants respond to specific stimuli like water, gravity, and light. Plants will point their leaves towards the sunlight so they can absorb as much as possible. Sunlight is needed for the plant to be able to make food. The sunlight is the stimulus, and the growth of the leaves towards the light is the response. Another stimulus, gravity, will cause new root growth in a downward direction. When a seed first starts to grow roots, gravity causes the roots to grow downward. The downward growth of the roots is the response and will increase their chances of survival. We know that all living things need water. Plants will respond to the stimulus of water by absorbing as much of the water as possible. This means that as the plants get older and grows bigger, it will direct the growth of the roots towards water. The ability of plants to respond to stimuli ensures their survival. Let's connect all the parts. Match each response to the correct stimulus. Click on the audio icons to have each choice read to you. Click Submit when you've completed your answer. Roots to grow in a downward direction. Seeds respond by absorbing it and roots grow towards it. Leaves grow towards this to increase food production. Super job! Water is essential for a plant's survival. A seed can respond to water by absorbing as much as possible so it can start to sprout. Roots will grow towards water so that it can take in as much as the plant needs. Sunlight is another important stimulus which causes leaves to respond by growing towards the sunlight. The stimulus, gravity, causes roots to grow in a downward direction. Let's review the main points we've learned about how plants respond to stimuli in their environment. Plants need several things to survive. Many of these things act as a stimulus and cause the plants to respond. Plants will grow towards sunlight so that they can absorb as much light as possible. Gravity will cause roots to grow in a downward direction. This downward direction will increase the chances that the roots will run into water. Water, another stimulus, will encourage more growth in the roots so that the maximum amount of water can be absorbed. Being able to respond to these stimuli helps ensure the survival of the plant.